Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1535 Today's date is April 3rd, 2018, and the title of the episode is Fiat Currency Has Led to the Collapse of Almost Every Economy. The dollar is next. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the push is on to shut down the globalist system. Now, the globalist system was to have these trade deals that would work with the central banking system, with the globalist system, and at this time, we can see that those trade deals, well, they are being shut down. Now, TPP, we know, was completely rejected. It didn't go forward. If Clinton was elected, most likely TPP would be in place right now. We see that NAFTA, well, that's being negotiated. And we know that Trump wants NAFTA completely gone. And he's making all these threats right now because it's been going on for a very long time. And it looks like they can't come to any type of a deal. So he's saying, you know what? Let's just get rid of NAFTA altogether. That's really what he wanted from the beginning. He just wanted to get rid of NAFTA and basically get rid of TPP, get rid of NAFTA, get rid of the globalist system. Each phase where he's getting rid of these trade deals and every other deal, he is setting the economy up to be transitioned into the new system. This is what we see happening right now. On the other hand, the central bank, they're trying to hold on to their system. Now, what's very interesting is that New York Fed, they launched a LIBOR replacement. Now, we know LIBOR is manipulated, and they replaced it with SOFR, SOFR. And once again, this secured overnight financing rate is another manipulated interest rate benchmark. And they're saying it's not manipulated, but we know it's going to be rigged and manipulated because this is how the central banks work. Now, of course, they're saying this because LIBOR, as they know, is completely manipulated. And they set the new secured overnight financing rate at 1.8%, much lower than the LIBOR rate. So here we are with the Fed once again playing their games to convince everyone that, look what we're doing. We're getting away from the manipulation. This is not what is happening right now. They're trying to save their system. They're trying to save it in a way where they can bring down this system, blame it on Trump, blame it on those patriots who are trying to bring down the system to get rid of the central bank, and both sides are trying to gain the narrative. This is the battle that is going on right now. In the meantime, out in Russia, we have Iran. Now, they are getting ready to sign the Russian-led Eurasian Economic Union. And it looks like the deal's being finalized, and they're going to be joining this EEU. And we have Russia, Kazakhstan, Belarus. They're all together. We have Armenia, Kyrgyzstan. They're all part of the same bloc. And basically, this is going to be a free trade zone where these countries can trade freely. And just like we have the One Belt, One Road, all these trading platforms are popping up right now. The TTIP, which was voted out in Europe, and there's a couple of countries that are saying, yeah, let's do this, but without the United States, I think it's going absolutely nowhere. The TPP's dead. NAFTA is going to be removed. The globalist system is coming to an end, and the central bankers are going to fight in any way they possibly can to keep their system. Now, the one thing we need to understand about a central banking system, again, I've said this many times before, we don't need a central banking system. It does not add anything to the world, to the people. It only adds to those people who are running it, and those people are the Rothschilds. Now, paper currency has led to the collapse of almost every economy that has tried to institute it, which means every economy that instituted a fiat currency, most likely backed by a central bank, has failed. When a government or a private Western central bank prints fiat money that isn't backed by any value, guess what? We have a destruction of the system. Let's go back in time and look at the history of fiat currency. Now, at the start of the first century, the Roman denarius was a coin containing approximately about 94% real silver. By the end of the century, the amount of silver was reduced to 85%. Devaluing the denarius meant Nero and succeeding emperors could pay off their bills more easily while becoming richer. Sound familiar? 100 years later, the denarius contained less than 50% silver. And in 244 AD, Emperor Philip the Arab devalued the currency down to 0.05% silver. By the time the Roman Empire collapsed, the denarius was made of 0.02% silver, and it became useless as a currency. In China, copper backed China's initial paper currency. When copper became scarce, China began to make iron coins. The iron currency became overissued and soon became devalued. France has an interesting history with paper money. It may be the only country to face economic collapse not once, not twice, but 3 times by flooding the country with fiat currency. Following World War I, Germany's Weimar Republic faced historic debt, so Germany put the printing presses to work. A total of 133 printing companies were kept busy. The mark became more than worthless. It was used to heat furnaces. Burning the paper currency to keep warm was more efficient than using it for trade. People used to go to the stores with wheelbarrows of currency, and they couldn't purchase anything because the hyperinflation took effect, and they just didn't have enough to purchase the goods. Now, throughout the 20th century, many other countries flooded their economy with fiat currency and collapsed as a result. The direct correlation between government interference with money and the devaluation of currency seems to escape many. And remember, when we say the government, it's the central bank intertwined with governments. This is their system. And if we look, we can see in Argentina, 1989, 1990, guess what? 196% inflation. Armenia, 1993 to 1994, 438% inflation. Austria, 1921 to 1922, 124% inflation. And the list goes on and on and on. And every single one of these countries, like 29 of them, has seen their currencies fail, and they've seen hyperinflation. This is what we are seeing today. Now, in the U.S., the colonies, happily jumped on the fiat currency bandwagon, and they began flooding the land with their own paper money. When these currencies quickly became overissued, they became surprised, and everything had to be devalued. The Revolutionary War was financed with paper currency called the Continental. It too crashed on a grand scale. This finally brought about some healthy American distrust for fiat currency. The U.S. dollar was now backed by actual gold and saw the most splendid and richest economic growth in history. People came from all parts of the globe to be part of such a success story. Then, of course, we had the Federal Reserve, which was introduced in 1913, and since that time period, guess what? Everything started to go the opposite way. In 1933, President Roosevelt made ownership of gold illegal. The ties between the U.S. dollar and the country's gold reserves were severed during the Nixon reign in 1971. The once mighty U.S. dollar instantly turned into a fiat currency. This was followed by a decade of disastrous inflation. And we've seen recession after recession after recession since this occurred. The U.S. has followed this historical pattern of paper money. And right now, the government, the central bank, they are printing like crazy. The government is borrowing like crazy. And basically, the dollar is being devalued, which means the cost of purchasing that product is a lot more. That's called inflation. And what we're going to see, just like every other country throughout history, we're going to end up seeing hyperinflation. It always ends up this way. I mean, history has demonstrated inflation is guaranteed as the currency devalues. There is no escaping history. Paper money and out-of-control national debts have always devalued the currency and caused massive inflation. We've seen this before. This is nothing new. We are headed to the same exact place. The central bankers know it. Trump in government knows it. And this is why there's a race to bring down the entire system. Now, the central bankers, they like to control each crash. Why? Because they can control the narrative. They can point fingers. They can blame everyone else but themselves. This is how they work, especially when we move to the point where there's going to be a reset. Once we reach that point where the whole system is completely breaking down right in front of our eyes, they know it's time for a reset. And what they do is they start to create the economic infrastructure someplace else. They do it very slowly over a period of time. They move manufacturing. They move gold. They move the exchanges. They continually do this over time to a less developed nation, and they build it up. And when it's time, what they do is they move it over and they make the world think that, oh no, this is natural. Because after an event, a war or something like that, we need to restart the system. We can't do it in this old country where the system was because they have no manufacturing. They have nothing there. There's no gold. There's nothing. The country needs to rebuild. But this new country, we have everything already set up. We already have the gold. We have everything. And this is what the central bankers were eventually going to do. Now, it would not start out as a central banking system. But what they would do is they would manage it. It would be backed by gold, or there'd be gold to build confidence. And over time, as we've seen in the past, they slowly come off of that system and they basically engage into their system, which is the creation of currency, which basically goes haywire. And yes, they can keep the system going for, 40 years or so before the whole thing starts to break down once again. And this is what they wanted to do with this system that is crashing right now. And it would have gone this route if Trump wasn't elected. Since he was elected, things have changed. The transition has changed. And what we're seeing right now is Trump is dismantling everything the globalists, the central banks, have set up. Remember, the central banks, their push was to have a one world currency. The globalists, a one world currency, a system which would be controlled by a central location. That's their whole model. This is why they wanted all the countries on an even playing field. Everything has changed now. And Trump and the Patriots are going to be battling against the central banking system. And it's going to be a long, drawn-out battle because central bankers just don't go away. They want to keep their control. They have no allegiance to a country, a group, a people. They don't care about the people. They don't care if half the population is obliterated. It makes no difference to them because they know as long as they maintain control, they have the power. As long as they can create the currency for all these countries, they have the power and they can corrupt each and every government. They're not worried about that. And right now, just like with Andrew Jackson, we're heading down that same exact path. So no matter what, this fiat currency is completely doomed. The reset is coming. And you can see by Trump pushing NAFTA out, pushing TPP out, and taking control and setting up these tariffs, reciprocal taxes, you can see that he is looking at the situation. We're running out of time. The system is going to implode on its own, and he wants everything in place. This is why the central bankers, they're pushing interest rates up. They're both doing the same exact thing. It all depends on who controls the narrative and who has the ability to say this is why this happened. Now, of course, the central bankers are intertwined with the deep state, where they have the corporate media as the mouthpiece. So when the system goes down and we're into this recession, entering the depression, the corporate media, they're going to be out there pushing their agenda, saying this was all Trump's fault. The central bank tried to control it with interest rates, and Trump put forth his tariffs, reciprocal taxes. On the other hand, Trump will call out the corporate media and the central bank, probably calling for an audit, saying that they're the ones who destroyed the economy, and he'll start giving proof. And he'll make a case of why the central bank needs to be audited. And we can see already that there are bills in place to make the dollar linked to gold. And this doesn't mean that these bills are going to be voted in, but this is the beginning stages. I don't think the government officials that we have now in Congress will say, hey, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. Let's put some checks and balances on there so we can't get the free money from the central bank. No, most of the individuals in government, they're going to have to be fired. And we're going to have to bring on new people who look at the situation and say, yeah, this is a good idea. We need checks and balances. We need to make sure that the central bank does not exist, and this is how we can move forward. But one thing is for sure, we are headed towards a transition. So get prepared, get ready. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.